This is a probably super awkward angle to start this video out on, but I wanted to do something goofy so that way it wasn't so serious because it's just hard to talk about. So I'm going to be talking about, as you probably know from the title, my story of having a miscarriage. And if you didn't know, and this is the first video you've seen, I actually do have a daughter now. She's downstairs with her dad, and that's her baby bath. So let's just get into this. I apologize if this is an awkward angle or the lighting's a bit janky. I've just filmed a lot of videos today, and I'm a tired mama. I'll just start from the beginning. So obviously I was doing what it takes to make a baby, and I wasn't being very smart about it, and I ended up missing my period that October of 2015. I know, this was a good minute ago, so I really did not want to talk about this, but then I'm finally feeling comfortable enough to talk about it. And I was like, that's weird, because I'd never been late on a period for the most part. I mean, I had, but it wasn't like, it just felt weird, if that makes sense. Something was up. And then I started looking up pregnancy symptoms and stuff, and I just felt pregnant. So I told my boyfriend, and he was like, no, there's no way you're pregnant, but like, take a test. So at the time, I didn't have my license, so I couldn't go get a test. And I was obviously not going to tell my parents and have them give me a test. We were doing long distance at that point, because actually, I'm moving around. So I actually had moved at the end of October away. So this was a real fun situation. So I essentially got pregnant right before we moved. And I just felt really pregnant, and I was like, I know I'm pregnant. I'm 100% pregnant. I just knew. And then, so his mom and him came and got me that weekend because I was so, like, depressed because I had nobody where we moved to, and we actually were moving back to a place we had before, but I hadn't lived there for a minute, and I just didn't keep up with my friendships, because it's really hard to do long-distance friendships if you haven't been friends or enough friends for a while, and the friends I had were not the best of friends to me, so I just didn't really have any friends. So they came and got me, and it was a Friday when they got me. So then that Saturday, I started having really bad cramps and bleeding. It felt really weird. And then I was having a lot of, like, pain. How TMI is this about to be? I probably should have put a trigger warning, but by the title, you should probably know. Well, so basically I was having pain in my vagina as well. And I was just having so much pain all over my body, so I just thought I had started my period, but also got a kidney infection. So, because I knew it wasn't a UTI, which is a urinary tract infection, if you're not aware, and because I had gotten one, actually, like, probably right after I lost the V card, and I knew it wasn't that. So I was just miserable. I was in so much pain. So Saturday's when I started bleeding. I'm trying to figure out how this went. It's been a minute. Okay, yeah, so that was Saturday night. I was crying like all night. It was horrible. And it takes a lot, or at least it used to take a lot to make me cry. The mom life is not allowed for me to be, cold-hearted, I guess. I've been so emotional. So I was just miserable that entire Sunday. I pretty much just tried to sleep the whole time because I wasn't able to get into the doctor's till Monday. So my mom was in this town that we lived in before, which we actually are back to my hometown. My grandparents didn't even know I had come up to stay in my hometown, but I needed to go to the doctors, and they are the only other people that have, like, the rights to be able to sign consent for me to go to the doctors. And So they were able to get me in, but they were ticked that I was even staying with my boyfriend at the time, and they were just really mad about the whole situation and annoyed because they didn't know about it as well. But I needed to go to the doctor because something was obviously wrong. So I ended up going to the doctor, and what did they do? They found blood in my urine, so they just automatically assumed that it was a UTI. And I also was bleeding now. So they just put me on antibiotics, and it didn't go away. So then, skip to the next week, I was still having that pain. It, like, went away, but then came back. So I was like, what the heck? I ended up having to go back into the doctor's. They also did a pregnancy test this time. So they look at my vagina because there was problems, clearly. And the best part was I was still going to my pediatrician. My baby is so mad right now. She's with her dad. I'm not just ignoring her. She likes her dad more than me, so he can calm her down better than I can. So the best part was I was still going to my pediatrician, and because they had asked about sexually active, that's why they did the pregnancy tests. And after looking at my vagina, they said that I had vaginitis, which is like, I guess it can be comparable to a yeast infection without the yeast. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, you pretty much just have to put like ointment down there and do some bath soaks, and it heals it. I think it just makes it really raw. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not a doctor. You can look it up though. But then they came back in the room with a pregnancy test that was positive. So they were like, and I, at that point, since I had started bleeding, I didn't think that I was going to be pregnant, because I was like, oh, I started my period. I can't be pregnant. And I figured all the pain was coming from this vaginitis. That was not the case. I was like, no. They explained what positive was. And there was the 2 lines, and I was like, no, I'm not. And, like, in my head. And I was kind of just sitting there like, I was silent. Like, I don't even think I said anything. And they were telling me, like, what it meant, basically giving me the rundown of everything. And so my grandma's the one that took me to the doctor, right? She wasn't in the room because they had to look all down there, so she left the room. And so they were like, you're going to have to tell somebody about this because you need to get prenatal care. And they also needed me to go to the lab to get my blood drawn to figure out how far along I was. Was it how far along I was? I don't know if I told that. Either way, to figure out, like, my levels and stuff. And make sure there wasn't anything else, like, going wrong that they could see from a blood test. So I was like, they were like, we can tell her out there. We can pull her back in here and you can tell her, or we can tell her. But you need to tell her. You can tell her once you get home, but you need to tell someone. Because I was like, I think I at first said no to telling her or whatever, and, like, was kind of freaking out because I didn't know what to do because, you know, I was 15 and pregnant. Or so I thought. So they pull her in. So I decide to just have them tell her, but be in the room with me. Which is probably stupid. I probably should have had them tell her not in front of me and let her have some time to cool off. But I was kind of scared she was going to leave me at the doctor's, to be real with you. If I seem, like, way too calm about talking about this, I have a very morbid sense of humor, and I detach from some stuff so it doesn't hurt as bad, I guess, to talk about. Plus, I have really worked through this situation. They tell her, and of course she flips out. She ended up telling me that my great-grandma, who was still alive at the time, was going to, like, basically disown me. And then I had said that she was just really nasty about it. And then I ended up making a comment saying, well, I'm not going to let you stress me out because that can kill the baby. And she said something like, I hope it does, which is horrible. She has apologized for this. She was just very mad in the moment. She doesn't really know how to express her feelings entirely. It was really crappy, and she admitted that, but there's nothing she can do to fix it now. I held a grudge for a really long time on all of this. To be honest, I'm still not exactly, like, happy she said it, but, like, I'm over it, but, like, there's still part of me that's, like, surprised when I, like, remember that she said that. It's like, wow, who says that to somebody? But it was still irresponsible because, like, I couldn't even drive or anything. I couldn't do anything. Hadn't worked a day in my life other than at the office. So then she was going to take me to get my blood drawn, and, like, she was just completely making me feel so crappy the entire time. And I think I ended up convincing her to let me tell my boyfriend because she wasn't going to. She wasn't going to let me talk to him. She wasn't going to let me see him. It was bad, but I convinced her to let me go and at least tell him. Because I think I had texted him that they were going to do a pregnancy test or whatever, but he was, like, asleep or something, and I had told him, I think, over text that I was pregnant, but again, he was sleeping. So I showed up at the house. So at that time, I was a weirdo and wouldn't knock on somebody's door. I would, like, text my friends to come outside. Sometimes I still do that. But I wouldn't knock on the door, let alone just walk in. But this time, I actually went up to the door and knocked on the door. Because honestly, you never know at his house who's going to answer. So I opened the door all confused. And I show him the test that I was pregnant. And I kind of had, like, really teary eyes. And I just started bawling. And so he has his mom come out, and she was like, why are you crying? And she was grouchy because he woke her up, but he told her I was pregnant, and she was like, at first, like, not believing us, and then we showed her the test, and I actually taken a picture of the test. It wasn't the actual test. That'd be gross if I was carrying that around. Or at least because, well, I think threw it away at the doctor. I don't know. I wasn't wanting to keep the keepsake of it. So then she comes to terms with it. And I was telling her how my grandma was being. And she was getting really upset about that. Because it's like, she accepted it really quickly. And because his brother had did the same thing. She was then really supportive of it. And just, like, wanting the best for me and her grandbaby. His brother had come out and was like, oh, I'm not surprised, I figured this would happen, like the one that also went through the same thing. So, yeah, and then I left and got the blood work done. My grandma was like, well, we're not going to tell your grandpa, we're not going to tell anybody until we get everything figured out. What are you going to do? How are you going to tell people? So my grandma was like, everyone's going to be so mad, and what are you going to do? How are you going to tell everybody? Just completely, instead of, like, being like, okay, we'll figure it out, there's nothing we can do about it now, she was just completely horrible about it, honestly. And she was like, you told me you weren't having sex, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, at the time, like I mentioned in my 17 and pregnant video, I can't really talk too much about it and say specific things just for legal purposes. But I wasn't in a position to tell anybody I was having sex, basically. I was 15, so what else? How I told anybody else? Actually, my mom was the only other person that ended up finding out till, like, a long time later. I mean, a few friends found out a few months later, but that's about it. I really did not tell anyone until, like, at least a year later. Like, within that first year after, a few people ended up knowing. And I think one person told other people, so then they ended up knowing, but it was not a well-known thing, and honestly, to this day, I don't know how well-known it is. I didn't even finish the whole miscarriage part, but, so then, my aunt had just died the weekend before. That was really insensitive. I said that really just blunt, but it was a while ago, so I, like, obviously I'm not still dwelling in it. I shouldn't say obviously, that's rude. But I'm not still dwelling in it. So we had to go to her visitation after. And then I got my test results from the blood work that evening, and it came up that my HCG levels had completely dropped. Or I shouldn't say dropped, because we don't know what they were before, but they were, like, not pregnant. So I had gone through a whole day thinking I was pregnant and having to deal with all the horrible backlash of it. And I was already not really supposed to be seeing him, so it was kind of a problem. Like, they knew I was, but I wasn't supposed to be dating him, and it was a weird situation, because my mom was fine with me hanging out with him, so I was allowed to, and they couldn't really say anything about it, because they weren't my guardian. Like, they didn't have custody of me. They couldn't tell me exactly what to do. It was just a weird situation, but then they tell me that I'm not pregnant, and so I ended up talking to them more about it, and I figured out that, like, what happened was a miscarriage, but it had completely just gone through my system naturally. That's what that bleeding was, and so technically I didn't know about the baby until after it already passed away, but even though I didn't have tests proving it, I still thought I was pregnant. It wasn't a super drawn out miscarriage to where I was, like, planning everything, getting really excited about it, but I still had to deal with all the backlash of my family knowing I was sexually active and basically having to be punished for being a normal human. So I do not agree with being horrible to a child because they have sex, which is a normal human thing.
Editing cat here. I'm sick right now. There's a fan on. The baby rocker is going. So it's a little bit of a mess. But I wanted to add in that, like, you can just tell how uncomfortable I was talking about this because of how much I was just fidgeting with everything, like, moving around. And it's kind of funny because it's like, I can't believe how uncomfortable I was talking about it. I apologize, it was a little all over the place because it was hard to talk about, and, like, I was really uncomfortable talking about it because there's just, I'm a pretty open person about certain things, but, like, the deeper things, it's, like, hard to talk about because I don't just openly talk about them, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not used to talking about them, and so it just wasn't exactly organized properly, but this is a very real, raw video.
Obviously, you should probably be responsible about it, but yeah, like, we couldn't see each other for a while, and everybody was trying to prevent teen pregnancy from happening, and look, it still did. I mean, it did, but they were trying to prevent it from happening again and actually surviving. So the fact that she made that comment about the whole, I hope it does, like, it just really sucked because it really was. Like, it really did happen. I really did have a miscarriage, and she had hoped it would happen, even though she wasn't, like, meaning it. Then it ended up happening, which I think is why my family handled my getting pregnant at 17 so well, was because if they didn't, like, they just know how horrible it was for all of us when they were horrible to me about everything before. So I ended up having to tell my mom that Thanksgiving that I was sexually active. And my grandma called it a pregnancy scare, but it wasn't a scare. I was pregnant and lost the baby. She just didn't want to accept it. Oh, and here's the best part. They were like, oh, you need to go see a gynecologist because they need to make sure that, like, you know, all of the fetus is out of you, and because it can cause infection and stuff. And she refused to take me. So I ended up, that's why I was scared the following year when I had the whole misperiod thing. I was like, oh my goodness, it was ridiculous last time. And, like, yeah, it was not a good situation, but we're all good now. There's no hard feelings. I'm so thankful that I do have the family that I have. Everybody was just disappointed in me and wanted better for me. And they were just being protective of me and scared for me. So it wasn't anything like, they weren't trying to be mean. It just happened that way. Came off that way. They were just upset and didn't handle it very well. And they know that, and they've apologized. And it's okay now. But that was my miscarriage story. I don't know if I'm going to title it Miscarriage at 15, because that just sounds like, whoo. Thank you so much for watching. Just know if you've gone through this, you're not alone. I highly recommend watching my 17 and pregnant video, which is probably already linked in the eye at this point. But if not, I'll link it in the eye. And that will give you more insight on how that affected me through my 17 and pregnant pregnancy. Bye!